Alright, I'm going to demonstrate how to do Suuper Manip in New Super Mario Bros. Using the DesMuMe emulator. And you're probably wondering, what even is Suuper Manip, or super manipulation? Well, Suuper Manip makes RNG nearly 100% consistent for speedruns, especially for the any percent category where every second counts, but it can be used for any category. I'll be using the latest version of DesMuMe, which is 0.9.13, which is also one of the emulators whitelisted for emulator runs. That and Melon DS. This tutorial may apply to other emulators like Melon DS, but it may not work as the MAC address of the emulated console may be different, which does affect RNG. Anyhow, in order to do Suuper Manip, you'll need three things. You'll need the ROM of New Super Mario Bros., the firmware and BIOS binary files, and optionally and recommended some save data in order to get straight into 1-2. So the reason we need to be able to go to 1-2 is in order to check our RNG state, which is achieved by analyzing the randomized tiles on the right of Mario. When we see a bunch of cloud-looking tiles everywhere instead of random tiles, then we know Suuper Manip is active and it's repeating the same RNG patterns. If not, then it's not active. Note that the save data is saved as a DSV file, which is a specific type of DesMuMe save file used for the emulator, which you can download in the link in the description, and I will be using it in this video. Note that I cannot legally provide you with the ROM, of course, or the DS firmware, so you'll have to get them in a legal manner. So when setting up your emulator, you kind of have two options. If you already have DesMuMe, you can go into the folder and you can move both the settings file, which is right here, and in the battery you want to move the DSV file, which is your save file. So when we move these two files, DesMuMe will no longer recognize them, since the INI file is usually in the root directory over here, so it won't find it. And the same for the battery. If it doesn't find a save file, it assumes there's no save. Now if you don't have DesMuMe, you can easily get it on GitHub, which is under the TAS Emulators account on GitHub, and you see DesMuMe here as a repository, and we're going to go to releases, which is where the binaries or the actual program is stored, and we're going to go to assets, and we're going to get the Win64 version since that is the operating system we have Windows. You can just download that, show in folder, and we're just going to put it on the desktop here. And since it's a zip file, we need to unzip it, which we can do with Windows by hitting extract all, and you'll have it as well. Now quickly I want to mention that you'll notice that this root folder doesn't have any subfolders, and that's simply because we haven't used the emulator yet, as it makes folders as it goes. But just to be sure, we can create a new battery folder so that we can put our save data in there when we need to. Note that every copy of DesMuMe you have, like this one and this one here, are its own little programs, meaning it has its own settings and its own save data stored in it, so make sure if you have multiple versions that you're using the right one. Hello, it's me from the future. If you have trouble running DesMuMe, you may need the BizHawk prerequisites. It contains some of the Microsoft Visual C++ runtime packages, which is needed in order to run DesMuMe. You can unzip it and install it right here. Now with that, we can actually open the emulator now, and I'm going to make it a little bigger just so it's easier to see. Now once we're in the emulator, we need to configure our emulation settings, which we can go to config emulation settings, and they're right here. So we need to have our emulation settings exactly as follows. We need to enable our dynamic recompiler, use an external BIOS image, and use an external firmware image. And also make sure you hit boot from firmware like the NDS or just the DS. Now we need to locate our BIOS binary files, our .bin files, which are in my folder over here, firmware, BIOS, and this is our BIOS9.bin, which correlates to our ARM9 BIOS image. Same for our BIOS 7, and firmware.bin is our firmware.bin over here. And now we click OK, and we should be good to go. Alright, at this point we can now open our emulator directory and go to our battery file, and this is where we're going to put our new save data over here. So we're going to take our save data, we're going to copy and paste it right here. So we'll have the save file in order to get us right to 1-2, so that will save us some time. Now, in order to make Suuper Manip work, we need to open the game from the firmware when our DS's time is set to a very specific second, on a very specific date. Firstly though, let's check our emulator. So we're gonna open our ROM of New Super Mario Bros. And we're just gonna see if it's working. And if it is, we'll boot right into the firmware, not straight into the game, just the firmware. Yep, there we go. I'm just gonna touch the screen down here, and you'll see New Super Mario Bros. Is loaded right here, so we're all good to go. Now, like I said, we have to set a specific time and date on our DS here in order for it to get Suuper Manip, but by default, it matches our operating system's time no matter what, so we have a bit of a problem. And the solution to that is actually creating a movie using DesMuMe, which you can see down here. If we go to File and Record Movie, we can set any time we want, which is what we're going to do. So here the file and author don't matter, we can just set it to anything. I'm just going to set it to A. It will just be saved somewhere in the DesMuMe file, it doesn't really matter. But what does matter is the date we set here. And it is going to be September 21st, 2043 at 4:39 p.m. And remember, we have a 1 second window, and that second window that we're trying to hit is actually the 9th second right here, but it takes us a little bit of time to reach that screen in the firmware, so we're going to give ourselves 9 seconds of leeway to reach it there. I time it when selecting the game on the firmware 1 second before when we're supposed to do it, so in this case it would be 08. So we're going to wait 8 seconds after we hit OK. And to time this, I recommend getting out a stopwatch like on your phone and hitting start right as you hit OK here. So what's going to happen when we hit OK is the firmware is going to reset, and we're going to try to wait 8 seconds before selecting New Super Mario Bros. So that when we initialize the game, it will start at the 9th second. So let's start that here. So now I'm going to hold OK, and at the same time I'm going to hit start on my stopwatch on my phone right about now. And now we're going to wait 8 seconds, let's get there, before hitting New Super Mario Bros. On the firmware right about now. And now give it another second and we'll start up at the 9th second. Now we're going to go straight, you can see straight into the second file where our 1-2 save is, and all you have to do is enter the level, which we can hit with the default settings with X on DesMuMe, and we're going to hit enter. And if you remember, the way we can tell that Suuper Manip works is you can see these random tiles right here are actually showing up mostly as the same tile, which means congratulations, you got Suuper Manip. And at this point, no matter what you do until you close the game, you will have Suuper Manip. I recommend making a save state here, a save slot 0. So for whatever reason you don't have Suuper Manip anymore, or you forget to have a save state that has it, you can go back to File and Record Movie here and put back the date and time and try to open the game at the same time. To quickly demonstrate Suuper Manip and its powers, I'm going to start a new game and show you guys me getting the blue shell in 1-2 the very first try, which I'm just going to forward this. Another thing to mention is that double jumps do affect RNG. For example, if I do a double jump 5 times on 1-1, it may not work. I don't know if that's actually the value, but certain values don't work when you double jump a certain amount of times. So keep in mind how many times you're double jumping. So now let's go to 1-1 and let's actually go through the level, go through the motions. So that's 1 double jump, and you can avoid doing other double jumps by just crouch jumping, so we're just going to do that. So now if Suuper Manip works in our favor, which it should, the flying block will go to the left and will land on 1-2. Would you look at that? And when we go and open the flying box, we'll have a blue shell. And would you look at that? And that is the power of Suuper Manip right there. If I messed anything up or didn't explain anything clearly, or if you get stuck, write a comment and I'll try to reply to it. And that's about it for this. Thanks, mate.